Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I'll spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe. I love the idea behind this quote from Abraham Lincoln, but how do I apply it to setting up my to-do list? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. Welcome to Falling to Systems, a channel dedicated to the idea that with time and consistency, we're all capable of transforming into who we admire today. My goal is to encourage you to aim high and make success inevitable. At the start of each day, I often ask myself how best to channel my attention and energy to make the best use of my limited time. This typically looks like reviewing a list of things I could do, and then choosing the handful of tasks that make the cut. Sometimes tasks make the cut because they have deadlines, and that just is what it is. But when that's not the case, I've actually found tremendous value in considering leverage when choosing tasks. Now let me explain. All work falls on a spectrum of leverage. And if you've ever had to train someone on a new job, then you'll know what I mean. Teaching someone how to do a task that you could do in your sleep usually takes more time and effort than if you had just done the task yourself. But once that person is trained, then they can do that task instead of you, and then that leaves you free to spend your time on doing other things. And that return on investment makes the heavy lift of training them worth the effort in the first place. The more value a task produces, the higher its leverage. And recognizing the leverage value of work allows you to get more deliberate and intentional about how you choose which work you do on any given day. I like to classify work into one of three segments on the leverage spectrum: single serving, limited, and everlasting. Now, single serving work is work that delivers a single instance of value. So in our tree chopping example, this would include each swing of the axe. The portion of wood that comes out of the trunk represents the single instance of value that each axe swing produces. Next we have like limited value work. And this is work that yields several instances of value, but that eventually runs out. So sharpening the axe is an example of limited value work. It allows each axe swing to be more efficient and easier to perform, and it will reduce the overall effort and time needed to actually fell the tree. But the axe will also eventually get dull, so the value is limited. It doesn't last forever. And finally, we have everlasting value work, which, as the name implies, delivers value forever. In terms of chopping down the tree, this would be like writing down the procedure for how to sharpen the axe, and maybe illustrating the most effective technique for how to make the cuts. The task of documenting this information only needs to happen once, and then it can be applied in infinitely many times to chop down any number of trees. When you start to look at your work this way, you begin to notice something. Higher leverage work usually makes lower leverage work easier to do. Single serving work is usually repetitive and kind of boring, and that's also what makes it so great for optimization. And optimization is precisely what limited and everlasting work is best for. When I was first building my running habit, I found that constantly making little decisions added up to a fair amount of friction when trying to get out the door. Figuring out how far I needed to go and which route to take could easily be just enough of a barrier to keep me in bed on a cold morning. That all changed the day I decided to finally sit down and spend a few hours creating a running plan. I laid out every run for the next 9 months. And once that was done, all I ever had to do on any given morning was to just look at the plan and execute. No more decision making, wondering if I was doing the right thing on any given day. Making the running plan was a great example of limited leverage work. The outcome gave me value for 9 months and made the single serving work of doing each run a lot easier to do. And this brings us to our final point. When it comes to building a compounding system that transforms your life, single serving work is often the only thing that actually counts. Going back to my running example, all the reading and planning in the world wouldn't do me a lick of good if I didn't actually go and get the runs in. Consistently building mileage day after day was the only thing that counted in terms of becoming a stronger and more capable runner. And the same with cutting down a tree. Until you actually swing that axe, all the sharpening in the world doesn't matter. High leverage work can be sexy and fun to do though. It's the world of research, tool building, and planning. It's also a fantastic way to procrastinate. Pro tip, a good way to think of procrastination is to think of it as the time spent between single-serving tasks. Now, the 4 ideas covered here are all connected together and form kind of like what I think of as like the secret behind getting more done with less effort. Recognizing that all work falls on a spectrum of leverage opens up the ability to classify it. You can then make wise decisions about how you spend your time and energy by balancing the fact that limited and everlasting work makes single-serving work much easier to do, and always keeping in mind that when it comes to compounding results, saving time to do single-serving work is important because that's usually the only work that matters. Now, do you have a personal example of high-leverage work making your life easier? If so, I'd love to hear about it. Please leave a comment below about whether the work was limited value or everlasting, and the kind of single-serving work it streamlined. I'm sure you'll inspire me and others, and who knows, you may very well make a tangible difference in our lives. Single-serving work is the unsung hero of any compounding system, but how do you keep your spirits high when failure begins to enter the picture? Be sure to check out this video here to see how. That's all for now. Thanks for visiting the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.